Hi, I'm Joy, and you know what's fun? Reading people's natal charts. And I do that quite a bit, but I have not made a video like this before, so this is a fun new thing for me. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and do a screen share of the chart that I'm going to be reading. But before I do that, I just want to give a little introduction to my approach to astrology because I think it's different than a lot of astrologers' approaches. And the reason for that is because rather than studying what other people say the common manifestations of certain placements are and kind of memorizing them, or looking at past experiences, other people's charts that I've read, people that in my life, people that I know, and seeing how these types of things generally manifest, and then focusing on like a detail-oriented, like, okay, this is here, so that means that your mother is whatever. Instead of looking at it like that, what I like to do is consider the signs as archetypes. And each one exists within each of us, and the planets are like different types of energy. Like Venus is very beautiful and attractive and focuses on appreciating beauty and attracting and harmony and, you know, just all the niceties in life as an example. So there's a very gracious, pleasant energy involved when we're talking about Venus. Mars, on the other hand, is very assertive, and there's a lot of yang energy and a lot of drive and power to do. That's Mars energy. So the different types of energies that are in different places in our charts, either the sign or the house, I think tend to combine in really unique ways in every single chart based on all of the other things in the chart. And I have focused much more in my understanding of astrology and learning astrology. I've focused much more on like understanding the basic nature of each sign, each planet, that sort of thing. And then kind of just when I look at a chart, I'm getting it's sort of an energetic reading, like an intuitive feel for how it all combines together in this one particular chart. So I focus a lot less on specifics and a lot more on just general tendencies. And that's another thing that I see differently with astrology than what a lot of people do. I don't see it as necessarily predictive. I think that if anything, it just shows us what our natural tendencies are. And we can either work with those tendencies or we can fight against them. We can do things to support them or balance them out. I think just being mindful, being aware of our natural tendencies gives us a lot of power over whether we want to continue to behave in that way or whether we would rather do something else instead. So I think pretty much the entire chart except for the angles, which I'll get into once we look at this chart, and also like the lunar nodes. Also the lunar nodes, which that's the south node and the north node. Those are about like what our comfort zone, like where we're coming from in life and where we're headed, what our destiny in this life is. And those are not tendencies. That's something in astrology where it just is what it is. Like, look, this is your north node placement. You can't change that. That's where it is. So let's go ahead and take a look at this chart and we can get rolling. All right. So now this particular chart is the chart of somebody I know, and so her ascendant is in Capricorn. Now the ascendant is the most apparent thing about us, like from the surface. It's our demeanor, it's our default mode of operation. It's the thing that stands out to people when they first meet us, or if they don't know us really well, it's what they'll associate with us. And this can be a very surface thing, but it's still a part of us, kind of like our face. You know, people think of us and they think of our face, and just because it's only the surface doesn't mean that it's not important. So the ascendant is right here, and then the first house has to do with identity and autonomy. So looking at this chart, the first thing that stands out to me is actually the fact that there is an interception in the first chart. So an interception means that this entire sign, which is Aquarius, is within the first house, and there's no house that goes into Aquarius. So this person, if she had been born closer to the equator, or maybe even at a different time of the day, she would have had a, you know, each sign would have had a house that goes into it. So we have the first house in Capricorn here, and then the second house is in Pisces, and Aquarius is intercepted. And they always come in pairs, interceptions. So it is the Aquarius-Leo pair that's intercepted. And then anytime there's an interception, there's also a duplication. And the duplication is right here in Capricorn. So if there weren't any interceptions in the chart, each sign would only have one house in it. But because this particular chart has an interception, both Capricorn and Cancer have two houses in it. So we've got the 12th house and the first house in Capricorn, and the 5th house and 6th house in Cancer. So what this means, the reason that this stands out to me, is because anything that's intercepted is going to be internalized and intensified because of the natural, you know, I just have this like weird notion, like, am I actually recording? No, I'm gonna stop share and double check. Okay, I'm totally recording. All right, fun times. All right, let's go back to that screen share. You know, when I do this kind of thing, I tell myself it's all right, you can edit it later. You don't need to worry about it, but then I like never go back and edit it, so it's whatever. Anyways, so what we have here is the 12th house in Capricorn, and because the 12th house is in Capricorn, the area that the person doesn't identify with, the area where it's like egoless, like it's not something they consciously recognize in themselves all that much, but it's still there because we all have all of these archetypes. But the part of us that's like beyond ourselves, or like buried in our unconscious, or that sort of thing, that's what the 12th house is all about. And there's also a loss of self with like it can involve addictions and like imprisonments and like any kind of institution where you lose your sense of self. You know, you're just a face in the crowd, or just, you know, a number on a list, you know, that sort of thing, military, prison, whatever. So loss of self is what the 12th house is all about. And of course, that can also mean spiritual surrender. And there's a lot of depth and power that you can find in the 12th house if you know how to work with it. But basically, what we've got here is the area where this person is blind to their own tendencies is Capricorn, but it's also their ascendant, her ascendant. So it's like she doesn't recognize how Capricorn she comes off to people when she just meets them. And what she has instead as her like self-concept is going to be probably a lot more Aquarius in nature, because we have Aquarius intercepted. When something's intercepted, it's internalized and intensified. So because there's no place in her life, no house, where Aquarius and Leo have a natural place to manifest themselves, they are just internalized. And because they aren't getting as much outward expression as other signs might, they get intensified through that process. And what can happen with interceptions is that the things that are intercepted, with all that pressure on them, all that internalization, they can wind up coming out like a diamond later in life. So a lot of times when there's an interception, people sort of just don't display that characteristic or those qualities of either the signs that are intercepted, or sometimes people have planets in signs. And I myself have 6 planets, including my sun, Venus, and Mars, intercepted. So for me, interceptions are a really big deal. And I know a lot of astrologers don't even like to use interceptions, but I have found in my experience that it matters a lot. So I use them and I look at them and I think they're a big deal. But anyways, all right. So whether it's a planet in an intercepted sign or just the sign itself, because it's being internalized and intensified, a lot of times there comes a point in life where we're like, okay, no, it's time to get this out there. It's time to express this. And it's been under so much pressure inside of us, and it's been such a point of introspection and consideration that it sort of gets perfected in a way. Like when it eventually comes out, it comes out, really strong. So anyways, what we have here is the chart of somebody who believes herself a lot weirder and like more unique and like progressive and like odd than how she appears to other people. So other people are going to see this really responsible, possibly hardworking Capricorn tendency, but she's going to see herself as like, what? That's not me at all. Like, I don't recognize how much work I actually do. I actually also have my 12th house in Capricorn. And I did not realize that I was a workaholic. I have totally been a workaholic like since I was a teenager. I got my first job when I was looking for jobs and trying to babysit and stuff like that constantly when I was I don't know, I think I got my first babysitting job when I was like 9. I like talked somebody into letting me babysit. And even as a kid, like around the house, I'd always be trying to like earn money. Like, what can I do to like, what kind of chores can I do? What can I do? Like, there's something I want to buy. Like, how can I earn it? And then as a teenager, I started working when I was 14. And then I had like 2 or 3 jobs most of the time for a lot of my life since then. And, I would work, 40 to 80 hour weeks pretty regularly. I think like 65 was usually about the max. That's a lot of work, but I didn't recognize. Oh, and then I was like very like work oriented too, but I didn't realize how much I did that. I was blind to it because I have my 12th house in Capricorn. So Capricorn is basically about creation and initiation of physical or material stuff. That's the kind of the bottom line with Capricorn. And it is ruled by Saturn, and she's got Saturn here in Libra in the 9th house. So we can look at that later, but that'll impact how this plays out to some extent. But anyways, the most interesting thing to me is that there's going to be this duality about her, where on one hand, she, like her identity as it appears to others is going to be very Capricorn in nature, but the way she sees herself is likely going to be more Aquarius in nature. And isn't that fun? Something interesting in the chart. All right, so then moving along through the chart, the next placement that we see, so the chart will go this way. There's a natural cycle with the zodiac wheel, and each sign sets up the next sign. It both provides a foundation for the next sign, and it creates a dilemma that the next sign needs to answer. And interceptions and duplications can make a difference with that too, because like since Aquarius doesn't really have a place to express itself in her life, it's harder to get into Pisces. And because Capricorn doesn't get, like, the issues created in Capricorn don't get resolved in Aquarius, it's harder to resolve the Capricorn issues, which can be like being over serious or like a little bit too risk adverse sometimes, because Capricorn, even though it is focused on creating physical stuff, so there's this a bit of a like a proactive build material conditions that are favorable, a lot of times financial. So even though there's some of that with Capricorn, it's still Earth, so it's still very traditional in nature, and it's going to follow suit with society a lot, or with somebody's, you know, whatever they see as like the role they should be in based on their upbringing a lot of times, because, you know, that's to them that sort of is society. It's like their subculture sort of. So so Capricorn's going to be like have a lot of initiative about like doing things the way that society, you know, they think society wants it to be done. And in Western society, a lot of times that means like business oriented, very like go-getter, and very like climb the corporate ladder kind of a thing. But that is not always the case. Like somebody might have a different upbringing, or a different idea of what their role in society is, or, you know, what's the ideal manifestation of that physical initiative is for them. And that can come out. So the Capricorn energy, I think sometimes it gets a little bit too stereotypical with like the, you know, corporate CEO sort of idea. I think it can take a lot of different forms. But anyways, so then moving along, we have, I'll just go to the next placement, which is Chiron here in the 4th house. Now, the 1st house, it's our identity. The 2nd house is about our values, our self-worth, our like material conditions and finances. It's ruled by Taurus, so there's some influence of Taurus in there, and it's in Pisces here, so there's probably some interest in spiritual stuff, or, you know, metaphysical stuff, or there could be, like with the 2nd house, there could be like a shopping addiction or something like that, because Pisces sometimes has an addictive tendency, and there's a tendency to be compliant with Pisces. So personal finances and spiritual surrender or submissiveness, compliance can take now I'm looking at how we've got this stuff opposite that. Anyways, can be part of having Pisces in the 2nd house. And then the 3rd house is about like your foundation of knowledge and learning, your early socialization, like your siblings and neighbor kids that you'd play with, that sort of thing. So the foundation of interacting with peers happens in the third house, and it's also about, like, you know, how to socialize, you know, light socialization and communication and learning, that sort of thing. And that's in Aries. So Aries is the always need to do something energy. So somebody with a third house in Aries might want to, like, talk to people a lot, or always want to be, like, learning or teaching about stuff. Nothing deeply philosophical in nature, but just like general knowledge. Or there could be, like traditionally astrology would say that there could be issues with siblings related to Aries energy. All right, so then we get to the fourth placement, which is Chiron, in the fourth house. And the fourth house is about our psychological foundations. So this is about early childhood. This is about our family of origin. And having Chiron in the fourth house means that the deepest pain that this person experiences in life is likely related to her early childhood or family of origin. And it's in Taurus. And Taurus is very focused on stability. There's like a very, like, slow and steady wins the race kind of expression of this archetype. So there might have been like a lack of stability in Lauren's family life with this placement. And this line right here, the IC, is how we are in private. And it's kind of like how our family needed us to be. Like, we took on this role because we had to in our family of origin in early childhood. And so we just kind of, like, carry that through our life. Like, this is who we are at home in private. And so it looks like Lauren might have needed to be stable to have a certain stubbornness about her own desires and values, to be a little bit selfish. So that might have been necessary, or it might have been rewarded. But then, because we've got Chiron here, that could also be a point of pain. So maybe she needed to do that, but it was also punished at the same time, or one way or another, there's some family of origin pain here. And with Chiron, it's called the wounded healer. And basically the idea is that it's an area of very deep pain for us, but once we address it, once we process that pain, and once we heal ourselves, then it puts us in this position to have a healing influence on others who have similar wounds. So we're able to use our grief to learn compassion, and we can be quite the inspiration or source of healing, or source of information for other people who have had similar issues. And because in what we have here with this long triangle with these dotted lines is something called a yod. And it's also called the finger of God, and it's pointing towards Chiron. And when this shows up in a chart, that's a pretty significant thing. It means that it's pointing from one thing, you know, from these 2 points to this. And how it works is these two, well, it's actually both Saturn and Pluto over here in Libra, and then Neptune here in Sagittarius. Both of these things are pointing to this, and they have this blue line between them, which means that they understand each other pretty well. They're it's called sextile, and they kind of like, they get each other and kind of passively support each other. And then this green line here means that neither of them really gets this placement that well. So it's like they're kind of looking at each other like, what's he talking about? Do you know what he's talking about? And this one's like, so you might want to think of it as like two coworkers, and like this is the boss. So he's saying like, okay, some stuff needs to happen. And these two are like, do you have any idea what's going on here? I don't get it. Like, like what's going on? And there's this tension here, and they kind of work together to figure it out. So you have to look at the placements involved and how the combination will create tension with this point here. So in this case, Neptune in Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is mutable fire. And basically that means that it's bringing closure to spiritual stuff and passion. So fire is basically about experience. It's about passion. It's about life. You know, it's action in terms of like going out and getting the experiences. So Sagittarius is looking for closure on that. So the cardinal signs, which are Capricorn, Aries, Cancer, and Libra, are the creators. They're the initiators. They start a cycle, they get it going. And then the fixed signs, which are Aquarius and Taurus, Leo, and Scorpio, stabilize it and keep it going for a while. And then the mutable signs, which are Sagittarius, Pisces, Gemini, and Virgo, are the ones that finish up the cycle by changing it in whatever way it needs to get changed, and then bringing it to closure. So they release whatever it is at the end of the cycle. So Sagittarius a lot of times is about like the quest for truth, for like not just like your personal truth, but like the truth. And having Neptune here means that this could be an area of imagination, of dreaminess, of being unaware of the influences on you. It can be related to addictions and self-delusion, illusion. And having that in Sagittarius means there might be a tendency to get like caught up in like what she sees as the truth, pretty much, or like possibly going too far, especially with Mars here. Wow. Okay, so having Mars here also, and then having it in the 11th house also. All right, so having Mars and Neptune in Sagittarius means that there's going to be this real push for finding out the truth. And then because it's in the 11th house, this is like your general social sphere. It can even be broadened and say like your community or society or even humanity. It's like not your besties, you know, it's not the people that, it's not your loved ones, it's not the people that you're closest with in life. It's like everyone, your entire social sphere. So having Mars here means there's going to be this drive to like share the truth. this placement can be very, what's the word? Zealous, can be zealous about sharing what they see as the truth, and having that conjunct Neptune means that there could be like a tendency to like not realize the impact you're having, or not realize how you've been impacted. Maybe not realizing how you've lost yourself a little bit to this. And then the part of fortune, that's what this is here too, which kind of suggests that it's okay to do that. Go ahead and do it, run with it, because that's where you're going to find some success. So we've got these placements on one side that are like creating this tension with the early childhood or family of origin pain. And then on the other side, we have Saturn and Pluto in Libra in the 9th house. So Saturn is basically like the brakes on a car. So if the entire chart, your entire life is a car and you're on a road trip, Saturn's the brakes. And people tend to look at Saturn as being kind of a downer, being serious, being restrictive. There's definitely limitations when Saturn's involved, and a lot of times self-limitations, like the things that you believe you need to do or not do in life, your sense of responsibility. And like we said before, this is the ruler of Capricorn. So we've got that in Libra. And Libra is about harmonious interactions with other people, getting what you want or need by making sure that others get what they want and need, being fair to other people. And it is cardinal, so it takes initiative in that area. And Pluto is also here, and this is actually part of the stellium here in Libra, and we'll come back to that. But basically, Pluto is the transformative energy in each of us, and there's some heaviness and intensity involved with Pluto, and that is combined here with Saturn in Libra, which means that there's going to be this like really intense feeling of responsibility of making sure that others are taken care of. And it's in the 9th house, and the 9th house is about like higher learning, travel, like long distance travel, or like getting out and exploring the world, like religion and philosophy, that kind of thing. If you think of the houses as different phases in your life, the first house is where you're like, I'm going to, like, this is who I am, this is what I do, and then the second house is, this is the stuff I want. The third house is, this is how I interact with people, like on a casual level, just general interactions with people, communication mainly. And then the fourth house is your psychological foundations, the way your early childhood formed your psyche, basically. The fifth house is, you could think of it as like reaching the point of being a teenager. Oh, and the fourth house is also related to emotional processing feelings. That's part of the whole fourth house. And having this here means there's probably some unprocessed, or not necessarily there is unprocessed stuff from childhood, but that there's stuff from childhood that like probably doesn't get processed until, at some point later on. Like, it's not processed in childhood. But anyway, so then the fifth house is when you learn who you are beyond your family. It's like being a teenager, and or like even an older kid. And if you think of a kid that's like, hey, look at me, look what I can do, and, you know, kind of showing off a little bit, that's the fifth house. And there's creativity and romance. A lot of times, you know, having kids and like parenting is related to the fifth house. You know, falling in love, it's a very fifth house thing. So that's what the fifth house is all about. And then the sixth house is when you like go out and get your first job, you know, it's like the, or start to like live on your own and run your own household. So this is like, you know, how you work, you know, at your day-to-day life stuff. And there's also a little bit of a focus on service to others and that sort of thing. And then the seventh house, well, this line right here, the descendant, is the polar opposite of the ascendant. So what happens with that is because somebody has their own like individuality and like personal identity, to some extent, like focused on the ascendant, it creates this like natural like imbalance with the area of the chart that the descendant is in. And a lot of times what ends up happening is people are attracted to partners, whether it's a romantic partner or like their best friend in life, or you know, any kind of like really significant person in your life, like someone who like matters a lot for, you know, a fairly significant amount of time. That's related to the descendant in the seventh house. And so generally there's this tendency to be attracted to people who, or I should say there can be a tendency to be attracted to people who have a lot of the, you know, energies associated with this, the archetype that it's in. So you might be attracted to emotional people or emotionally expressive people and nurturing people. Or alternatively, it could be people who bring out that quality in you. That's something that happens sometimes. And then looking at the seventh house, so this is where you form your most significant partnerships in life, including your spouse. This is the house of marriage. And then the eighth house is the house of intimacy. There's kind of a lot of focus on other people's money, which I think is not necessarily as big a deal as people make it out to be in the whole scheme of the eighth house. But it's about intimacy. It's about it's inherently about vulnerability, because intimacy means being vulnerable, and because of that there can be a focus on power as well with the eighth house and with Scorpio, which is the ruler of the eighth house. There can be a tendency to like there's a desire for merging. Sex is a thing associated with the eighth house. And like power struggles or concerns about power. So then the ninth house, so this is, you know, we form our partnerships, and then we like really get close to somebody. The intimacy happens in the eighth house. And then the ninth house is that stage of life where we're young adults, like going off to make our way in the world. Think of like the 22-year-old college student who's like learning all about all of the things and think they know everything about everything and think they're going to live forever and aren't concerned about running out of time or really like even consequences or whatever. It's that stage of life where you there's this like thirst for knowing what life is all about and experiencing it, and that's related to Sagittarius, and it's related to the ninth house. And Jupiter is the ruler of the ninth house, and it's right at home here in the ninth house. And so what we have here is this period of life where someone's like, you know, discovering what their truth is, or what they think the truth, not their truth, what the truth of the world is, and truth of life is, the ultimate truth. And so for you, you've got this sense of self-limitation and this intensity related to how you interact with other people, related to your give and take with other people, as like almost like a spiritual truth for you. And then I'm going to go ahead and finish up the wheel here, just because I got all the way up to the ninth house. All right, so then the 10th house, okay, this is midheaven, and this is opposite of your private life. So this is your public life. This is your public image. This is your professional image. I think public is probably a better way to put it. So maybe even like your reputation could be related to this. And the 10th house is pretty much the same thing. You know, it's your professional life, or like how you make your mark on the world. That's the 10th house. And you have Uranus here, which is revolutionary, free thinking. Some people would say rebellious. I don't like that word myself, but there's this impetus for revolutionizing that's here in your, like, how you make your mark on the world house. And it's in Sagittarius, so it's about truth. So that combined with this Mars and Neptune, like, wow, it's a whole lot of Sagittarius, like drive to change the world, pretty much is what it would come down to, with particularly Mars and Uranus here in the 10th and 11th house in Sagittarius. So anyways, then the 11th house, we talked about that being like the wider social sphere, and we already talked about the 12th house being, so like basically as you go around the houses, it gets like more, like you can think of different stages of your life. So this is where you get your higher education in the 9th house, whatever that means to you, whether it's traveling the world, or you know, exploring your truth, or like the truth to you, or religion, whatever the case may be. And then the 10th house is where you make your mark in the world. And then the 11th house is like how you impact your social sphere once you have the stability, you know, everything here leads up to how you are able to interact here in the 11th house in your social sphere. And then in the 12th house, that's like old age, where you retire, you know, you stop doing the stuff you do, and you know, get ready, you know, you start reflecting back on your life, and, you know, get ready to not be you anymore, to die, basically. So this so thinking of it like this, as the different stages of life, it doesn't mean that you're not going to see, you know, your 12th house placements come alive until you're old, or it doesn't mean that you're not going to see tendencies from the 8th house when you're a kid. It just is a way to conceptualize it that I think can be useful. And then the same thing applies with the signs, how they sort of start out with birth in Aries, and then go around, and then there's like a figurative death in Pisces, and rebirth in Aries again. But anyways, so then looking back at this yad. This is pretty much the point of everything I just said. We've got this intensity and self-limitation and sense of responsibility related to how you treat people, and you see this as like the truth of how people should be treated, and it gets along really well with these social contacts, your wider social sphere, and the strive for truth over here in Sagittarius. But they're like confused about this early childhood stuff. They're like, what is up with this? So it's called the finger of God because it's pointing to this, meaning, look here, do this. This is important. This is a part of your chart that you really need to take a good look at. And then it's opposite Uranus here in Sagittarius. So there's this need to, well, okay, there's a tendency for this drive to revolutionize or to be an individual that is opposite this childhood stuff. And they kind of, like, you can't really focus strongly on one without taking your focus away from the other. And that's the nature of all of the polarities within the zodiac. So here, if you're focusing on Gemini, you are not focusing as much on Sagittarius, but they are like two sides of the same coin. So when you can find a way to balance this out, it gives you this tendency to be able to work with the natural tension between the two and see both sides of the situation. And my guess would be, just looking at, you know, where all of this stuff is, that this tendency to revolutionize and to be a revolutionary in areas that you see as truth. There's this compassion related to early childhood pain and, you know, whatever the nature of the early childhood pain was. And being in Taurus, it could be related to poverty, but not necessarily. It could just be related to instability at home. But it looks like there could be some like compassion for like people's childhood, or for children, or for people's like deep inner wounding, like the basis of their psyche, that helps you understand that not everyone's going to be able to just jump right on board with all of this like Mars energy and this, you know, your inner revolutionary that are, you know, trying to make their mark on the world here. It's one way of looking at it, at least. Another way of looking at it would be to say that it holds you back from being able to do this stuff that you want to do, that there's some deep like psychological, or I don't necessarily want to say psychological because that makes it sound like it's a problem. Like, it's not necessarily something pathological. It's just some pain in your psyche that has to be dealt with in order to resolve in order to focus on changing the world. You know, that thing that Gandhi said, was it Gandhi or was it, I want to say it was Gandhi, be the change that you wish to see in the world. I think that this is something that this opposition is yelling based on where everything is. So anyways, then we can keep working our way around the signs and houses here. We've got the 5th house in Gemini. So with this, there can be, what I've seen is an ability to write well, to communicate well. Enjoying debating could be a thing. It's not for me. I also have my 5th house in Gemini. It's not a thing for me. I don't, that is not how I create and self-express, which is what the 5th house is about. Creativity and self-expression and, you know, the areas where you shine. So, but it could be like knowledge focused, and maybe you enjoy learning or teaching, and this can be related to dating too. And Gemini is notoriously like 2 minds about something, so there could be that, like a little bit of early indecision in dating with this 5th house being in Gemini. And you don't have any placements there, but it is opposite your 11th house placements here. So these tendencies here that we talked about earlier are going to take attention away from this area if you let them. So if our natal chart is essentially how we're all unbalanced in life, because you know, basically when we're putting pressure on a certain area, it's taking attention away from other areas, especially the polarity. So Gemini energy is very, or Gemini energy expression, I should say, is kind of light. It's not like deep, heavy debates. It's more like light debates or light conversation, or just enjoying exchanging knowledge with people, and just absorbing a lot of information and curiosity. Curiosity is a cool thing about Gemini. You know, the little kid that's like, why? That's a bit of Gemini there. And then looking at the 6th house in Cancer, this is actually a pretty big deal in your chart because, first of all, you've got Cancer duplicated. It is both in your, or rather your 6th house and your 7th house are both in Cancer. And your your North Node is also in Cancer. So the North Node is pretty much like what you're here to learn to do in this lifetime. It's your destiny, basically. And the South Node is your comfort zones, where you're coming from. So every opposition, like every opposite point in a chart, whether you have any placements there or not, all of them are kind of a balancing act, sort of a teeter-totter, where if you put a lot of focus on one side, it's taking it off of the other. And your unconscious comfort zone is in this 12th house in Capricorn, where you don't recognize yourself most likely, or not very fully. Like, you probably don't realize how much work you really do, and don't realize just how hard you work to be what society wants you to be, which is, there's a lot of that in Capricorn. So the opposition here is between Capricorn and Cancer, and Cancer is, it's the ruler of the 4th house. So it's related to like early childhood conditioning, related to how we process feelings, how we were nurtured and nurture others, emotional expression. It's a cardinal sign, so that means it's about creation, initiation. And so initiating feelings, that's what Cancer is essentially all about. And it's related to the moon. It's ruled by the moon. And the moon is right here in your chart. So the placement of the moon is going to kind of flavor the way Cancer is expressed for you. But So Cancer, it's about initiating feelings or creating feelings. So it's very unstable. It's like inherently unstable, very moody. It's about emotional expression. Having your sixth house in Cancer, which I also have my sixth house in Cancer, means that your ability to function in life, in practical matters, and like day-to-day stuff and work is going to be largely determined by how you feel emotionally. And that's something that has been a bit of a pain for me, because I want to, like, I've got this blind spot here in Capricorn where I don't realize that I'm always trying to go, 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 go. I always like want to be, I always feel the need to get some stuff accomplished. And, being opposite of this emotional expressiveness and instability and the nurturing tendency here. So it's also about nurturing and being nurtured. And part of nurturing is just allowing things to be what they are. If somebody is crying, having a bad day, then you would hug them and say, what do you need? Do you need a blanket? Do you need some hot tea? Whatever the case is. And focused on, just the emotional needs of the situation, whereas Capricorn is like, we need to get some stuff done here. We need to get moving on some stuff. Like, no time for that emotionality. We got to make things happen. So in like in a very physical way. So the tendency to just go ahead and honor the emotional needs of the moment and how you flow about your day is actually something that you'll want to do. The life tends to support you when you move towards your north node, and it tends to not support you as well if you try to stay in your south node area. So this tendency to just address the needs of the situation in a day-to-day manner. And the sixth house can also be related to service to others. It's very like here and now and day-to-day. There can be, it's about like the details of how we go about our day too. And it's about like creating order in the day and that sort of thing as well. So having this in Cancer, though, means that the order of the day is that you just need to respect that, it just is what it needs to be, especially with this north node here. And creating emotional security and safety for others is going to be, and for yourself, is going to be a huge, 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 huge theme with this placement right here. And it's related to this placement right here because the fourth house is ruled by Cancer. So again, this Chiron placement is a big deal for you, or for her. I'm talking like I'm talking to her. Anyways, and let's see here. I wrote like 3 notes before I started this. There's a focus on your home and loved ones with Cancer. A stable home life is a big deal to Cancer. So I just so happen to know that the person whose chart this is a stay-at-home mother, and that might actually be like pretty appropriate for this placement here. Like that might make the most sense because this is about nurturing and taking care of others and like providing emotional security for others and that sort of thing. So that might make sense. And then the 7th house and the descendant are here in Cancer. So you know, what you're looking for in your closest relationships in life, or what she's looking for, is going to be this emotional safety and security, and you know, nurturing each other, and you know, being emotionally receptive, because Cancer is very sensitive too, so there's that. So when you're sensitive, you're being emotionally receptive. So within that, though, we have Leo. Now, Leo is how we shine. Leo is self-expressive. It rules the 5th house, so the stuff I said about creativity and whatnot are related to it, and it's ruled by the sun. So the placement of the sun is going to kind of flavor the way that this Leo energy is expressed. But basically, this is leadership and showing off, and not necessarily showing off in a bad way, but shining, you know, being willing to stand in the spotlight, and to be an inspiration to others, and to accept being the center of attention at times, because, you know, when you're putting yourself out there, when you're expressing yourself and others appreciate it, that's kind of what success in Leo is all about. So Leo is basically fixed fire. So it's stable passion, fire spirit. That's the basic essence of things. That's the truth of a thing. So Leo is about the truth of who you are, and like recognizing like the thing in you that never changes, that thing that's always the same, and then playing with, having fun playing with, and confidently expressing these this inner essence in a variety of ways. And doing this is very much internalized for her, because of the interception here. So I know somebody who has Leo intercepted, and I joke around that he shows off for himself, and I can see it happening sometimes, because he'll just be sitting there not saying or doing anything, and he'll just kind of start laughing. I've got a pop-up box. Please move. I've logged in from another device. Messenger is now inactive. I'm so confused. All right, I need to pause share. No, it is the video that I need to pause. You know what? I don't know how to do it. I am going to resume share and just do the thing I need to do real quick. Yeah, right here. I'm making a video. Anyways, here I am back again. All right, so we have, I just want to make sure that this looks like I'm still doing the thing. Please move this window away from the shared application. I'm really confused. Well, I hope this is still working properly. Anyways, so where were we? All right, so this person I know will like kind of smile or chuckle to himself, and I'll be like, are you showing off to yourself inside your head? And yes, he was. So this tendency to not assume the spotlight is one of the things that can happen with this sign Leo intercepted. And then having the moon in Virgo. So the moon is your inner world, and it is related to, it rules Cancer and the 4th house. So this is how, you know, your inner world is the stuff that people don't see about you. It's what's happening away from the public eye. This is your private self, your, like, well, your inner world. And for this person, it's in Virgo, and Virgo is very, like, detail oriented, very perfectionistic, very orderly, very practical, and that's what her inner world is going to be like. It's going to be kind of perfectionistic, and being in the 7th house means that she's probably going to find it really important that her loved ones, the people that matter most to her in life, that things are in a good place with those people, and her inner world will be a mess when there's a problem. So Virgo is about, is the most, it's earth, so it's the most concrete of the elements, and it rules the 6th house, which is about, like, day-to-day stuff, and then the moon, inner world and partnerships. So it's probably going to be pretty important to her to also have her loved ones be part of her day-to-day life, because of the relationship between Virgo and the 6th house. And she's also going to want to do stuff for them, probably. That can be related to Libra as well, because Libra has this push to make sure that other people's needs and desires are being met, but with Virgo, it's not so much about like I want everything to be fair, I want harmony, that sort of thing. It's more about like just making sure that things are right. So there can be, again, a focus with, you know, just keeping things orderly and like addressing any issues that come up in close relationships. All right, so then the 8th house is about intimacy, and we've got 3 important placements here. We've got Mercury, which is largely about communication and just like the way you think and learning. It's related to the 3rd house, and it's also related to Gemini. Venus, which I talked about a little bit at the very beginning of the video. So that's the niceties in life. That's everything that's lovely. Attraction, beauty, appreciation, harmony, and it's at home here in Libra because it rules Libra. And then the sun is like your core essence. It rules Leo and the 5th house. So this is like who you really truly are at the core of your being, and it's something that we kind of grow into throughout our lives. So a lot of times we start out being a lot more like our ascendant and our moon, and then we kind of like grow into our sun sign as we get older and discover who we really are, which happens gradually throughout life. And these 3 placements are all in Libra. So I already talked a bit about Libra, and then being in the 8th house, this is, okay, so with Libra and placements in the 8th house, I also have Libra in the 8th house. My Libra is actually intercepted in the 8th house, so like the whole of my Libra is in the 8th house. But there's this tendency to worry about the give and take in intimacy, and there can be a little bit of they talk about other people's money related to the 8th house, and I can say I've seen some of that, but it's ruled by Scorpio, and Scorpio is not inherently like materialistic in nature. It's very, very, very feelings focused. Scorpio is fixed feelings. So these are our deepest, most stable feelings about people and things. This is our attachments in life. So, our merging, our attachments, our intense, deep stuff in life, that's what the 8th house is about. And sexuality, having Mercury here means that there's kind of a mental focus on this kind of thing and a comfort discussing this kind of thing. And then having Venus in the 8th house means that you probably, or she probably has a bit like her sense of what's beautiful tends to be more intense and maybe a little bit dark. Seeing, the 8th house involves death too. Not the death of ourselves, but the death of other people in our life. And like Scorpio being fixed, because it wants everything to be the same all the time, like there's this focus on, it's ruled by Pluto, there's this focus on transformation with it. And it's not because it's easy to transform, it's because it's very, very, very hard to transform. Scorpio does not go with the flow. Scorpio is what it is. It's intense. There can be like this vindictive quality to Scorpio on like the lower side of the spectrum for how it's expressed. Like once you cross me, like that's it, like we are enemies for life. That's a very Scorpio sentiment. So Scorpio rules the 8th house. So in the 8th house, there's some focus on like the changes that happen are big changes, because once you merge with something or someone generally with the 8th house, if that changes, it's a big deal. That's a very, very deep thing. And then if that happens, you want it to like stay that way. Like, okay, fine, I changed. It needs to just stay like this now. It needs to be stable now, which obviously life doesn't work that way, which is very, very hard for Scorpio and for the 8th house. But anyways, so that's what the 8th house is all about. It's like our areas of transformation, because it's our areas of attachment and our areas where we, everything comes to an end eventually. So having to let go. So having your 8th house or your sun in the 8th house and Venus and Mercury like that, and in Libra no less, that sounds pretty sexual in nature to me, quite honestly. Like that seems like, wow, that she is amazing in this act, just saying. And then it's also, that energy is also combined with the Pluto and Saturn. energy that we talked about before. So all of these kind of like mesh into like one big single thing, like that just all gets combined. And then it kind of passively supports this Sagittarius drive to, express truth, to find truth and express truth, like not your personal truth, like in Leo, but like the ultimate truth, the truth of life. So, so this is what we call a stellium. And stelliums, a lot of people think that stelliums are some like superpower, like, whoa, look at all that energy that I've got going for me in this direction. But I find that stelliums are the most challenging aspect of any, and aspects are like relationships between the placements. And the reason that it's challenging is because there's so much focus in that area, and it's just too much pressure. Like there can be an element of trying too hard. I knew somebody who had a Capricorn stellium who just could not seem to get his stuff together, and had a very hard time in life because of that. And I know somebody with an Aries stellium who doesn't do a very good job asserting herself at all. So having a stellium can be just like, it can actually take away from effectiveness in that area because there's too much focus there and not enough focus on other areas that support it. So a thing that can be done to help kind of, well, first of all, being mindful of it helps, just like recognizing it, but then you can consciously put some attention on Aries. And Aries is is passionate, is decisive, and even impulsive, spontaneous. It's like there's an impetus to act with Aries. That's basically what it's about, is action. And it tends to be more like selfish in nature, more focused on self. So, doing stuff for yourself, like especially related to like the second and third house, and having the third house in Aries means, could mean like standing up for yourself, like, communicating what you want for yourself. So that's something to think about. And then other things to consider with it are that Gemini actively supports Libra. So if you need a little help in Libra, you can focus on Gemini, or like if there's, if it just feels like there's too much pressure going on there, ease back off of Libra or of Gemini a little bit. And then there's also a natural flow from Libra to actively support Aquarius. So you can kind of channel some of that energy here, or you can send it over into Scorpio. Though, let's see here. Let's take a look at Scorpio. You've got Jupiter in Scorpio, and Jupiter is our expansiveness. It's optimism and just limitlessness and growth, and there's some like positivity with it, like optimism, and that is in the 9th house in Scorpio. So it's also a little bit close to the MC midheaven, but all right. So with this placement, there's going to be and so Scorpio is inherently, like I said, about fixed feelings, stable feelings about things. So there's going to be this drive to develop a lot of those. And it's in the 9th house. So it's once again going to be related to philosophy and like complex theories and religion, spirituality, you know, ultimate truth kinds of things. So this right here doesn't actually, you don't see like any blue lines going over here, but it's related to these placements here in Sagittarius, because Jupiter rules Sagittarius. And then we are back around to stuff that we already talked about. So then looking at this down here, I'd like to just take a little look at how stuff is split up between, so this is fire, which is spirit and experience. Essence. Air is mental, it's thinking, socializing. You could say logic. You know, it's the mental realm. Earth is physical and material and practical, and then water is feelings. So you have, and then this is cardinal. This is creating and initiating. It's the beginning of a cycle. Fixed, that's the stable stuff, and mutable is where we edit, change, complete, finish, release stuff. So we already talked, so all of your fire is here in Sagittarius, so that's where all your passion is going to be. All of your spirit, and then you also have a mutable moon, which we talked about that before. But for the most part, I think having all of your fire be mutable, like looking for the conclusion to truth, or ultimate truth, kind of says a lot. And then all of the air stuff is cardinal. And that, I think all of that is here in Libra. So cardinal air is about initiating like socialization and initiating learning and thinking, and you know, it's the initiative with order, like social, I don't want to say social order, it's not quite right, but like it's mental, so like thought-based stuff basically. So it's all cardinal, so lots of initiation with thought-based stuff, so that can be ideas and stuff like that. And then that's all in Libra, so it's going to have to do with harmony with other people and taking care of other people, meeting other people's needs and desires. And then Earth, you've got a little bit all over the place in terms of these are called modalities, but you've got your South Node and Ascendant here in Earth, in cardinal Earth. So these are the things that you kind of want to get away from. Not that you can fully get away from your Ascendant, but what you can do is delve more into Aquarius, which is like unique and very like embracing of individuals and how they're different, and respecting other people's beliefs, and well, not so much beliefs, but other people's uniqueness as being just as valid as anybody else's. There's a bit of a humanitarian and progressive, like futuristic bend with Aquarius. So that can help to get you away from the South Node a little bit. And then, of course, focusing over here on Cancer will also do that as well. And then, you know, we already talked about these placements, but then having your midheaven, that's what MC is, it's midheaven, and that's like your public image. So your public image is Scorpio, which is like intense and a little bit dark and we talked about Scorpio a bit with those fixed feelings. Like emo is a word that comes to mind with Scorpio, and I have a Scorpio moon, so I I know all about it. But and actually my midheaven is in Scorpio as well. So oh no, I'm sorry, it's not. Just forget I said that. It's not in Scorpio. But I have, you know what, never mind, forget it. Anyways, so then having Jupiter in Scorpio means, oh, we already talked about that too. You know what, I'm just going to stop talking now. All right, so I am going to go ahead and stop this and not edit it and just go ahead and upload it. Thank you very much.